Hey Nico, hey Ethan. So this is what will be playing against Jarvis, tonight. I'm starting a little bit earlier than usual, in order to accommodate, the time difference between Jarvis and myself. I think one day out of the work week is gonna be fine. That's a good question. So for those who don't know, Vocotech and I worked on a French EDH deck together, namely Grenzo Dungeon Warden. Unfortunately, we got bad news today in the sense that the hideaway lands or the hideaway cards are now random at the bottom, so we can't just play the hideaway land and then stack whatever on the bottom like a Kiki Jiki or like a Sling Gang commander or sorry, Sling Gang lieutenant on the bottom and then Grenzo it out. But definitely one of the decks I'm most proud of working on. For those interested, I can give you more information on that. Unfortunately, MTGO doesn't really support that format at all. You'd have to probably play. Well, I guess you could play 1v1 on the. I don't know how you do it, but with the free format, and then you know honor system on both sides, right? This is what I will be playing. It's a pretty stock list. It does include the new, I guess, innovation, whatever you want to call it, or tech of Snuff Out, which is now possible because you don't really need as many Assassin's Trophy or flexible removal, given the Beseju in the main deck. I think only two Beseju in the main deck is something I want to try because it gives a better mana base or more provides for a more stable mana base, so you can cast turn one discard on time. The other thing it does is every once in a while you will draw two Beseju against like a control deck and or Delver, and it would be very inconvenient because they don't either don't have the wasteland or no targets, right? Because or both, and you're just stranded with essentially a lotus petal. Um, Not a big deal, but not negligible. I have lost games because of that, so something to keep in mind. I think three definitely is where if you really want to hold some certain strategies is definitely still fine. But I got advice from not only Jarvis but from said Reese Mental Step that they would recommend going up one black source, and essentially this might be the most stable mana base we've ever had because compared to the traditional list we played prior to Beseju, it cuts Lair of the Hydra or the Ninth Fetch, which one you want to want to say, for and a Birch Lore for two Beseju. So I think this is actually either comparable or slightly better than the mana base before. So probably the best, most stable mana base we've ever had. And especially given that Elves is struggling with the blue red Delver matchup at the moment. I think you definitely want to tidy that up. Uh, like I value mana bases, having a strong mana base a lot, so I think that is probably worth it. Shortly speaking, Jarvis and I are gonna get on a quick Discord intro, and we're just gonna have a brief intro before we start playing. I mean, that's a different format, right? Ethan, it's all relative, right? This is Legacy, so by all means, the mana base will be stronger than obviously Standard, Pioneer, Modern, etc. I guess the Modern mana base will be similar, but you're just gonna take more pain or take more shocks from the you know from the shock lands. I guess if you're playing Elves in Modern, it would be Overgrown Tomb, right? Also, if you are what's it called? If you want to watch from Jarvis's perspective, I will post his Twitch account here as well. One second, if you want to do that. Also, here are my socials in case people are curious. Yeah, that's what I heard. These triomes in modern have been, essentially making color just irrelevant, right, so to speak. The first two matches tonight will be. We're gonna play a total of four matches. The first two will be me on Elves and Jarvis on Blue Red Delver, and the next two will be the opposite. Okay, I think Jarvis just called me. Yo, just saw your message or your call. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. How's it going?
Good. It's going well.
So I'm also on already live. Just, good
Yep.
idea to test ahead of time. I think chat Twitch can't hear you, but Twitch, if you can just confirm or deny that, that'd be good. So I don't know if how what you've said on your side for your stream, but how do you want to start? I guess.
So let's just talk about I think you had the idea that you wanted to basically do this matchup in particular, possibly driven by the fact that Jorg posted that guide as well about the blue red versus um elves matchup. And so you suggested that we do some stream testing, a few games from each side, two matches from each side is what I suggested, and then talk about what happened after, what would happen or what happened afterwards, and if you have any new ideas on the matchup, just as a general, this is the most popular deck in Legacy, so it's good to try to learn the most about it possible.
For sure. I think what you said is mostly correct. The only thing I will just like amend to that, I guess, is the quick primer that Jurg posted. It wasn't a result of that. I didn't actually know he was working on that until I suggested this idea to you. But both ideas are essentially from the same thing. I know he and other elf pilots have really been struggling with this matchup. Notably, I think he posted on his Google Docs that lately in like big events challenges, he's like 27% or something against blue red, which is like very low compared to the matchup historically. And the other thing I want to mention also is I think Inigo brought to my attention that especially when I'm not playing in uh, the showcases or whatnot. Like I didn't play this past Sunday, but I think on the whole recently, especially post Ragavan ban, Elf pilots have been like 30% in the matchup, which is like really bad. And then I think this past showcase it was like 22%, which is like doomsday level bad according to Max Gilmore. So I brought it up because I brought the suggestion up to you because and York did this his primer because like I said the matchup I think has been really bad for the average elf pilot. So I wanted to explore this further.
Yeah, I personally think it's a pretty good matchup for Blue Red. I mean, obviously, it depends a lot on how much respect you pay to it in your sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
I think if literally the Blue Red deck didn't have any sweepers in its sideboard, it wouldn't be that good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fact that most people play one or two sweepers, like they actually have like real cards to side in, I think makes it a lot worse for you than probably before.
I would agree with that. I think the other thing too is, of course, pilot. I guess skill level and experience matters a lot, but I
Mhm.
also think more so than before in the sense that just based on my observation and just watching other elf players play, each mistake is almost game losing, and it's almost impossible, I think, for the average pilot to play perfectly in this matchup, and also probably explains why the average win rate is significantly lower. Obviously, the Delver pilot matters as well, and granted, my sample size is not as high as some of the data that is in challenges and whatnot, but I probably also, especially in leagues, I think the my opponent is probably not as experienced in the matchup as I am, which is I think why you were a perfect fit for this because you can play the deck from both sides, right?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played Reclaimer Elves in a long time, so I'm not going to say I'm going to be a like 95 efficiency right off the bat, but I I think just in general switching sides of a matchup is underrated in terms of learning the matchup entirely. I think you have to play it from both sides to actually understand it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with that said, I guess I want to mention, at least to my audience, Jarvis is going to be a lot better playing elves than I am playing with blue red. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's about the intro I have to this. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to input here.
Yeah,
So,
neither do
yeah.
I. I guess I gave a before I signed on this voice call. Um, I gave a quick intro to the list I'm playing. It's not really anything different than what I sent you earlier in the
Right.
week, but I guess with that said, we can get started. I guess if that's the case.
Yeah, so I'm gonna mute the Discord for now, and then we can re-enable it to trade the decks after the first two matches.
Sure. Do you want to mute the Discord, or do you want to just disconnect?
Uh, I think just muting it makes more sense.
Okay. I guess I'll do the same. I'll do the same. All right. So we are on the play, and I think that helps a lot. It's important to win game one. Not the worst, but ideally we don't have this Archon here. I think we still have to keep though. I think we have to keep most hands. Probably remove. Okay, he went with that. If we draw a creature here, we're just gonna go off. Given that we didn't, I'm gonna lead with Shepherd and then develop our mana. That way the glimpse is protected. The huge strategic advantage you have game one is there's no sweepers. The reason why I also play Shepherd here instead of just leaving two creatures in hand for the next turn is because I want the glimpse protected. And if we draw a creature, we're just gonna go off. All right. I think this is our cue to go off. We had the advantage of being on the play too. It's actually a good draw. And I think here we're just gonna go ahead and bog, because I'm thinking how we lose this game, and I think because we're ahead, we don't want to just let a Murktide slip underneath, right? Like, pacing of the game matters a lot. And then we can just bash for 12 next turn. Granted, this is like one hell of a start from us, and being on the play helps. I think Jarvis is potentially digging for Wasteland here, or just trying to slam some kind of defense or turn on the DRC. Okay, that makes sense. The Wasteland is ideal here because you don't want to just die to a top deck Allosaurus Shepherd. All right, that's kind of heads up. Minimize the damage from the Reclaimers bashing next turn. All right, we whiffed here, unfortunately. We can't. We don't have another play, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna go ahead and bash. We've already bogged, so there should be a Murktide coming down. It's important to keep track of the number of fours left in the deck for fetching reasons. That is a good draw. He's used 3 bolts already for whatever it's worth. We can bash. If we get bolted here, that's a big punish for the. That would be a big punish. I'm just gonna deck thin main phase here. I get an extra activation out of it. Hmm. Thank you for the subscription. Thank you for the follow, Lumberjacks. I think another Murktide is potentially coming down there. We awkwardly put ourselves at 9, but there's 4 bolts already used, so maybe that's okay. I'm gonna do it this way. I can take it a 4. If he has a bolt, then he can. I'm okay with him bolting the grist. Of course, lumberjacks. Appreciate it. My guess why Jarvis, yeah, the once upon a time into the grist was potentially game stabilizing, right? Because we dodge, top deck more bolts. I don't know how many bolts Jarvis is running, but we dodge that as a result. Once upon a time is just a completely broken card in my opinion. So here, I want to mention the sideboarding. I'm For those who don't know, Jorg actually released his primer on sideboarding a couple days ago, yesterday actually. Oh, sorry, 2 days ago, and he mentions he calls this Maverick style because you're boarding out the combo elements and it's just a grindy mid range deck. Oops, I want the heritage. The reason why I board this way is because I think if you play tight, and granted not everybody can, but if you play tight, you should be favored in the long game against Delver. Like I said, we were fortunate to win game one because we're on the play, and um, as you can see, Reclaimer pretty much went the distance there. Pretty good draws from our hand, but I also think Jarvis's draws were pretty decent from his side. Turn one DRC into multiple bolts is where you want to be. A second threat would have been ideal for him, but then he was under a lot of pressure from our turn two glimpse, right? With that said, I think this is how I want to be post board. Heritage Druid notably keeps the combo aspect of our deck alive, right? Like you don't want to you want to be able to punish the opponent when they don't respect the combo aspect. And winning game one is important because it means you can actually afford to lose a game on the draw. This is not great. The glimpse is kind of dead early. Um, I don't really like to mull, but this grist is like almost a mull already. I think the normal me would normally the me before would probably keep this and then probably get punished. I think here I kind of want to mold because the glimpse is dead for a while and the grist is probably dead, but this is tough. Let's keep it. We're up a game, so that's okay. It's like close because this is like potentially not on for a while. Not playing a threat here indicates bolt, so I want to lead with the heritage druid actually. I think we just take a normal land. And then I want to save that land for a fetch later in case it matters. I'm expecting bolt right here. Uh, Turn one to do nothing indicates either rough tumble or end the festivities on the other side. Yeah, so Josh sniffed it out as well. Interesting. Might be DRC here. Yeah, the bolt there is either one of two things. He's trying to concede the fact that he has a sweeper, or he was trying to pick off a reclaimer and Heritage Druid doesn't do anything by itself. So I think he's a little bit nervous now, given the way we played, that we have a combo hand, and his intuition would be correct. Um, I think here we can fire off the glimpse and see what he does. I don't want to get the grist dazed, is the logic here. If I didn't have the Heritage Druid in my opening hand, I would have led with Reclaimer. I don't think you can afford to just like hold this for, like, you may never get to a chance where there's a 3/4. Like, you can't just wait. Might be a Murktide coming. I'll put my headphones off for a second since I don't have Jarvis in my ear. Hmm. I think we can expect one of their hands to be forced in. So what I want to do is I want to force it through with Green Sun. We're gonna go down 11 here, which is okay. Um, could be lower depending on what they have, but we're gonna get Cradle, so I'm not really concerned about bogging here. Like, bogging is not a winning line in my opinion. Ooh, that's problematic. So we're at 10. We could eat the DRC here. The Wasteland up is super heads up by Jarvis. If I bog here, actually I should have hit the rainforest. That was a small mistake. I'll go to 9. Actually, it doesn't really matter. I'm second guessing myself a little bit. I think Josh might have been right about the endurance play because that loses to Wasteland, unfortunately. Sure. I don't think we can afford to get our land bolted here. Oh, main phase this. So I think what happens is we lose anyways, in the sense that if we play the endurance instead of the bog, yeah, we're just dead on board. We misplayed there. We should have played the endurance, block the DRC, save us life, and then we could slam the grids down. That was just a misplay on my behalf. I know, right, Jonathan? I threw that game right there. I believe we had it, and then I didn't think it through. Like that's the problem. You have to think kind of like 2 steps in advance with this deck, and I probably threw there. This is like pretty reasonable, I think. Thanks, Dukes. Appreciate it. Oh, just absolutely punished for the not fetching the whatever right there. Oh, yeah, that's okay. I thought about attacking, but it's not a big deal. Probably correct to not attack. A little bit awkward to draw the snuff out 1 turn after the playing the land there. I think we block. Might be a second one, yeah. So this is like maximum value off the endurance to prevent a Murktide, right? Might have to draw out a bolt here on the Visionary. I feel pretty good from this point at the with a glimpse in hand and a Visionary. Notably, this only eats one creature right here. Might pick off the endurance with a bolt as well, but we'll see. Notably, so far, game two, we made one mistake and we literally lost the game because of it. So, all right, it's gonna pick up the Reclaimer, which is interesting. Might signal that he has a Wasteland. Yeah, I think we have to fire it off now and hope to hit a mana source. There we go. I don't believe there's a choice to be made. That glimpse was very good. I think here we do not attack. Because it doesn't change the math. And we're not going to block with the other creatures given the board state. We also do not want to give any inkling that we have an Assassin's Trophy in hand. Might be a bolt on Shepherd. Jeez, rough is definitely rough. I wonder if we trade here. Probably. No, actually, I'll pass. I won't do that. So I think what Jarvis is doing here is he's trying to get a removal spell, so at least a 2-for-1 trade, other than 0-for-1 here. This is going to be potentially game saving. Um, it is for the late game at least. I think that the draws I'm most scared about are the ones where they essentially blitz you. I think I'll let that go first, and then I'm thinking about fetching here as a creature in response. I think I'm still okay with that, given that we're gonna draw endurance right now. I'm gonna do it on draw step, so that avoids Jarvis from controlling his draw. Ugh. Instead of getting hit. No, I want to save this for the Murktide in case they had force. Josh. This is an insane draw. I think we here, given that we have, it's either another endurance here or a Gris. I think we're just gonna get Gris and tick up. Okay, I think he got it then. If he's doing that. So putting myself at 6, maybe not the best idea, but I think it was okay. We could run it back. Yeah, I wanted the extra damage, but for sure. Oops. Where did it go? Oops, wrong one. Sure. Thank you for the subscription, Tron Travolta. Jarvis is up one game. Notably, we threw game two against him when we were up a game. I think they're. For what it's worth, Josh, Jarvis could have also just not bolted the arbor, so I think we probably lose anyways. So that's an extra bolt he could have had, right? That he chose not to use. All right, I think this is our game to get. I know, blessed shepherd, right? In hindsight, I probably should just pitch the heritage druid because we can start bashing immediately. It's a small mistake here. Hopefully not game losing. If we draw a, we'll see what he does, right? The endurance actually here is pretty clutch. And I'd be curious to know from the other side afterwards if Jarvis made a mistake too. I would not be surprised since this matchup is kind of intricate and there's a lot of close. There's a lot of nuance. This is like the full blowout, but I don't blame Jarvis. He has no choice. Like they're so behind because of this card. He probably even knows it's probably coming, but from his perspective, he just has to hope I messed up. Because like it's hard to win from this board state for him. What am I forgetting? Oh, the snuff outs. I don't know the difference between yours. I'll defer to you on that, Ethan. Ooh. Uh, the arbor is kind of bad, but I think I'm gonna keep. Yes, Fey Frog. That's the exact reason. There's just way too much to navigate through, in my opinion. I think here seems like Bold is up. I think I'm just gonna lead with the Birch Lore. Sort of natural order. I think it's not that bad. The thing is, the Reclaimer changes the equation too, right? Like the Arbors become better if we get a Cradle later on. And I just do not like to mull in general. It's not so much the counter spell as Fey Frog. It's the fact that they have like sweepers, so your Heritage Druid are rarely on. Also, like Jarvis knows better than to let me attack with 3 elves. The other thing is submerges are a problem too. I think we want to be able to endurance next turn. Might walk into a daze here, but that's okay. It feels like it could be a Murktide coming, but I think if he has a Murktide, that's okay. We have the Green Sun. I always live dangerously. Like, unless I absolutely have to, I will not evoke. Because I think it's hard to win. It could be. What did he exile with iteration? Oof. All right. Might be Murktide now. This is potentially good for us. There's 2 forces that have been used already. Um, we just gotta dodge Wasteland here. He will definitely attack. Yep. Uh, I think a bolt is coming. Yeah. Because I think he knows he needs to keep me off endurance. I know, right? It's just two Jund decks. Hmm. I think we have. Well, there's so much in the graveyard at the moment. I think if he has it, we probably lose anyways. The Murktide. Yeah, I don't know about that, Josh. Like I feel like we just lose if we do that. Yikes! Not hitting the third land is huge here. Uh, we can't bog because the Murktide grows, right? And we're just dead on board. At least this game it was. Three lands is where we want to be in this matchup. We unfortunately we're stuck on two. But Jarvis played well. He knows the critical number is two. Sorry, three. It's got to be the endurance. There's an argument to be made. Actually, run the symbiote in first. The problem is if it gets bolted in response, the Burst Lord, then I'm short mana. I think given that he had to force there, it tells me he does not have removal. Or, yeah, of any kind. Brainstorm can change this, obviously, but for the moment, the shields are down. Virtualor is actually notably very good for sequencing. Actually, we can once. I'm not gonna do that. Rough tumble here would be rough. Pun not intended. Okay, at least we're dodging that for a turn. No, that was my dog, Dukes. Yeah, this is the endurance, barking for us, right? While we have some small downtime here, I want to also personally thank Jarvis for doing this with me. I think it's not just for me, but really it's for a lot of the elf players right now who are really struggling with the matchup. I think I'll go ahead and do it this way. Oops. I think we take the visionary here. It was we can bog. I don't know if I want to do that though. We can apply more pressure here. He has 4 cards in hand. I could regret doing this, but we'll see. I know, right? And then we play offense. Hmm. 3/4 tribal coming in. I think we just continue to slam endurances and then pressure. Like it's Tomerworth mode time. I think the tricky part is knowing when to turn the corner because a good offense makes for a good defense, and when the Delver player has to play defense, it's not as efficient, right? Like they have to cantrip kind of awkwardly. They may trade then if that's the case, yeah. Because this is just like too much damage, right? I think the best case scenario here for Jarvis is make a Murktide and then a Shepherd here ends the game on the spot. All right, so this is match two. Jarvis won match one, I won match two. So 50-50 so far. I guess I'll go on the phone with him. I mean, on Discord right now because we're gonna swap decks.
All right, so we're going to trade the decks real quick.
Sounds good. I have you on the line still. So I just unmuted.
Yeah, I unmuted as well. I need to put the Delver deck into a trade real quick.
All good. Okay.
And can you paste the dot deck file?
Oh, here you mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
I will do that.
So 1-1 in matches as blue red. So we're going to switch sides now, chat. All right.
Perfect. That makes it easier. We can just straight swap 75-75.
Uh, I'm going to take a few seconds to go to the restroom and get some more water. I have
Sure.
a bit of a sore throat. It's actually been driving me crazy, but
Okay, go for it,
so
man.
we'll be right
Hey,
back.
thanks for being a trooper. Oops, wrong one. I should have imported. All right, there we go. This is a pretty stock list. As Jarvis is, using the restroom. Um, I didn't know Jarvis' exact list, but I had a feeling it would be something close to this. Parts of Progress makes a lot of sense. I mentioned this in my it's gonna come out next Tuesday, but my metagame update that it's a good call right now against lands because that's one of the probably slightly unfavorable matchups for blue red. Uh, I expected two sweepers and maybe 1 to 2 submerges. So this is consistent with that. I wasn't sure it was gonna be two ends of facilities or one split, which he has here. But everything else is like pretty stock. Let me check my chat. So good question by Max. He asked if the matches were 2-1 or 1-2, both. Yeah. So I mentioned it earlier that I made a mistake game two of match one, and it was game losing, which is consistent with what I kind of said before in the intro, before we talked on started the match. Whereas the elf player kind of has to play almost perfect. If you make a mistake, usually you lose the game on the spot, and that's exactly. Yeah, we won game one both times, but to be fair, also Jarvis was on the draw both times, so that hurt him. And probably something we would address in the post mortem afterwards. Whereas, so I was the beneficiary of being on the draw, sorry, being on the play both matches, which obviously helps. Also, we kind of had, especially both game ones, there's a strategic standpoint advantage of knowing there's no sweepers game one. Typically speaking, I mean I've seen that the one list that had two end of festivities main, like I think a few months ago, but that's rare.
Anyways, I'm back now.
Hey, welcome back.
So I think I'm ready to play the other side now, if you're
Cool.
ready.
Yeah, I will put you on mute now, and then I'll go ahead and create the match again.
All right.
This hand is a little bit reactive. If you know you're playing against elves, you kind of want to have a turn one play. You do have disruption. I think maybe the ponder can find us a. We're on the play again. Unfortunately, I'm like whitelisted, I guess, right? But I think here we definitely want to what's it called, have a proactive play. But maybe the ponder can is fine. I think it's fine. We have a slower long term threat in Murktide, but ideally you have a turn one play. Sure. I think here we can go ahead and chain lightning the. Well, we can go ahead and brainstorm first of all. Well, actually no. I'm likely what we're gonna do is we're gonna chain lightning the bolt. I mean the arbor, and then bolt whatever he does end step. Because I want to save the brainstorm to dig deeper next turn. I got this. So Tron Travolta, I got the second match. So it's 1-1 each, or however you want to say it. Yeah. Full disclosure, I believe Jarvis will be a better elf player than I am a blue red player, only because he's played it more recently. All right, so this kind of worked out. I'm gonna go after his mana, which is should be no surprise to anybody. I think the waste can probably be bottomed, and then I can pitch a one force, and then we can slam on Murktide. We have no choice. I think we want to play the brainstorm. Well, the daze is dead. One of them will be in the hand, and then the other one we're gonna play. I think we're gonna play the brainstorm this turn. So put this in the hand, bottom that brainstorm. We already did we play a land yet? We did not, so that's good. I think we want to chuck the land, and the force is dead. So this could be bad for us. Like our shields are down, right? Oh, it might be. Ooh, that is good. Using centuries for E on top. Yeah, that's a good point, Max. I think we just have to play everything. We know force is on top, so on the Delver trigger, I'm gonna fetch it away. Might be a visionary here. Could be a reclaimer too. Or yeah, I would guess. Initially, when tap two mana, that's either a hardcast visionary, or I'm more likely to guess reclaimer here. Uh, We can do it on upkeep so the Delver flips, Josh. We know it's force. That's true, Josh. For sure, that's fair. I think here we have to get rid of the cradle. We're like hell bent on shutting down their mana and buying a few turns. This is like all really bad. Yikes. I think the card that has to go into the hand here is the Power Blast because I can upkeep, dig one deeper. The force is just straight up dead. I'm gonna do it now. Oops. 4, 5. And then if he has it, he has it. The Wasteland off the EI was huge though. All right. I think here, how I would. The good thing is like all your cards ever since Ragavan got banned are pretty good. Obviously, you want to end the festivities, the rough tumble, and I think the Snapcaster is good, and obviously the submerge. Cards I don't really want here is I think we want all the flyers. The Snapcaster might not be the type of game I want to play. The Borrower seems really slow. I'll cut that. Power Blast is bad, and Sanctuary obviously is like really good here. I don't think there's anything from the mana base we can cut. Possible we just don't want to play this kind of game and just go low to the ground. We have one cut. Maybe it would have been cleaner to not kill Grizz. I think we had to because he could have just sacked his thing to kill our. Well, I get no. You're actually Max. You're right because he's forced to kill my thing anyways. So let me think about that. I would be down a threat for whatever that's worth. But you get the extra 3 life though. I mean the damage, which is probably relevant. It's close. It's definitely a consideration that I didn't think about. I am thinking of. Speaking of thinking about though, how did I do this the other day? I think days can be cut. I'll do it this way. No, at that point he could minus max. It was at 2. The first turn he plus after taking down the Murktide. I cannot keep this hand. This is a lot better. Um, like I think here I kind of want to make sure I hit land drops naturally, so I'm gonna actually put the ponder back. I don't. You want as from the Delver perspective, you don't want too many. What is it called? You don't want too many cantrips in your opening hand against the elves. I think Channeler is the best possible start. Given no removal, I think we have to fire it off now. Like I cannot just get comboed out here. Huh. That's a pretty good card. I'll put it on top. And then we're just gonna go flying tribal here, as Max would say in the past. Hmm. It might be an instep once upon a time, if I were to guess. Actually, I think I'm gonna iteration here. Graveyard. I'm gonna put the channeler in hand, put back the days, exile that. Graveyard. I don't think a wasteland is gonna be the difference here. Graveyard. The way I built my mana base on the other side, I know it's not as immune. It's not, it's more immune to wasteland. Um, ponder. I think we leave that on top in case. 8. So what we did here is we played around the endurance on a one turn clock. We could have got the chain lightning too, but we're getting the chain lightning. Um, we have to hit the heritage druid, right? Ooh, he kept it in natural order. I think we can just bash here and then everything else is lethal. One more and then we'll do a post mortem. If I happen to win the draw again, the play here again, I'm just gonna give Jarvis because I think it's a little bit unfair if I want all four. I think here, um, a little bit of a slower hand, but I think you still keep. I think here we get punished, so we have to like just remove the heritage druid. If they go like shepherd into like crate or something crazy like that, we get super punished. I think the play here is brainstorm. That's a lot of lands. I think we have a Murktide next turn, and we have permission and removal, so I think I'm okay with that. Sure. The line here is we're gonna slam Murktide. We're probably gonna just bolt whatever they do if it's like relevant. If it's a Shepherd, we definitely bolt. And then we're gonna slam Murktide and then hold up Force. Sure. Maybe I should have left the whatever. Might have been useful here. Cannot. This is not useful at the moment. Um, but this will go in my hand. I'll put this in the deck. Play that. Oh, actually, that was a mistake. Should not have done that. Yeah, I am. I am. Legacy Council. Natural order. Okay, that's good too. I believe he's pretty ahead here, but we shall see. Um, this game is close, and I think he is favored at the moment because of the Gris. Oh, I could have. I screwed that up. I should have dazed that. May matter actually, but we'll see. In case he casts Archon or something. Probably Archon on instant. So Jarvis is mentioning too. Grist Milling Hoof was big sad. This is game one, Legacy Council. And also not everybody boards it out. It really depends. I think he probably got it from here. It's very difficult for the Delver player to beat an Archon game one. Can't do anything there. Yep. Actually, yeah, we're dead. Alright, I'm gonna board the same way I did the previous game. Also, very important for the elf player to. Good days. What did I take? Oh, Pyroblast. Like everything is good here, right? Obviously, I'm saying that about the consensus best deck in the format. Oh, I'm on the play. I think here we just want to hit our second land drop and then into DRC. It's like pretty reasonable, especially on when on play. Any order. That's bad for us. Jesus. Sure. I think here it's like really awkward, right? Like I want to go DRC, but that's gonna be real bad. I'm gonna see if I can cheese a win here. Argument to be made. I forced it once, but I don't think I like that play that much. All right, we can get on the board here, so to speak. I'm gonna put away these four. Well, Possible we should have molded the game, the hand, and we wouldn't be in this mess, so to speak. But I felt like it was okay because we were on the play. It's just unfortunate the ponder missed. Maybe it's it's just running natural order. Maybe for Archon or Progenus. Probably Archon. I mean, Progenus. Hmm. Small misplay by Jarvis there. Should have tapped the cradle before bouncing. But I'm sure like he can probably pick apart my Delver play too. I know we gotta end the party here, right? It's too much partying going on here. I'm a old man now. I think the game is probably over. This is the kind of board state you don't want to get into with elves, where they just mucked up the ground or the air, so to speak, and especially without dealing with the. I think we need an iteration here. Hmm. I think we can put the channeler in our hand, exile that, cast that. I think we're gonna get bled with the symbiote, so we have to kind of do it now. Yeah, I the elf player, well Jarvis, is firmly in the driver's seat here. Uh, yeah. That might be the natural order. Yikes. Actually, we might as well do it now. Uh, oops. We are dead though to the shepherd. Yeah, that's fair, Max. I just think the problem is we are if snuff if your removal spell gets countered at the wrong time, you probably will lose anyways. I don't think it really mattered there, to be honest. Like if you get to the late game, you're probably in good shape, in my opinion. But Lang Lang brings a good point. I should have actually cantrip for the end of festivities, but I don't think it would have mattered. Well, it depends on what the next two draws are. Maybe we get back into the game. I just think we're too far behind. I think if I were Jarvis, I would have just not bounced anything and just like Alpha Strike. Like Jarvis is a good enough player. I don't think he will lose from this board state, given that how much ahead he is. The exception is I should have cantrip for the end of festivities or rough tumble, right? I think that was I realized it right afterwards too. I should have just pitched the Delver, but I was like tunnel visioning into the Murktide region. But I think regardless, even if I found the end of festivities, given the Wirewood and Visionary engine, we're probably still dead. So Jarvis mentioned the same thing. He realized that he was just supposed to just lethal me, right? Oops. All right, I want to have Jarvis come on, and we'll just discuss. Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Actually, before we forget, do you want to just go ahead and exchange the decks back?
Yeah. Sorry, let me make the binder real quick.
Sure, sure. So good games. I think overall, I think probably learned a lot, especially from the Delver side playing this.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like I feel like you didn't realize how broken the deck was until you actually played with it just now, right?
So I didn't want to be completely lost in our match today, especially since like I haven't played too much Delver on Moto. So like I know the
Right.
interface with Ponder is like I'm not used to it if that makes sense. So I just played one
Right.
quickly yesterday just to
Oh, I
make
see. I
make sure
see.
that I don't put the wrong thing on top and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the
Like
deck is really, 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 really good. as you
It
can
is.
tell.
I agree. Like the floor is just so high.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you could tell, you basically just never get flooded or screwed, barring, like, I think in that game, I pegged you as having kept a hand with no red.
I didn't have. Okay, so I led with the island and then just whiffed off the ponder to find the rest of the hand was fine. And
Yeah.
I just whiffed off the ponder and I just like, oh shit, I'm probably just gonna straight up lose this game now.
The deck sees enough cards, even with one land, that I think you can generally work itself out.
Uh huh.
Um, so let's just recap all of the games real quick.
Sure.
The first match, let's see what happened. Let me try to remember.
The first match,
First.
I was fortunate to be on the play. Both.
So actually, it's kind of funny. Technically, MTJ just handed you all four die rolls, but I mean, obviously, it doesn't. That's that can happen in a tournament, but I do think that Elves versus Delver, especially in game one, the die roll matters a fair amount.
Correct. I would agree with that. Because as the elf player, from a strategic standpoint, you know there's no sweeper, so you just want to just flood the board. So and there's no
Yeah,
punish, right? And I think as an elf player, you really do not want to lose game one. I mean, in
right.
general, but
Yeah. So I was trying to. I mean, I think I lost game one because I actually think I was kind of close because you footed the board off a glimpse, but then you seemed to have not that much towards the end. Then I barely lost because like my Murktide got killed or something. I don't really remember. And I think the other two games just showed how good like I think a lot of this Delver sideboards look like this, but having just like Rough Tumble and the Festivities, Submerge, and the Snapcaster Mage are all pretty valuable.
mm-hmm.
Just like in addition to just like having extra copies of your sweepers, having extra copies of your important removal spells, or even
it,
just even burning you out matters because I am I correct in saying that you don't play scavenging ooze anymore?
that is a correct statement. The
Yeah,
reason being is because, as you can imagine, it lines up really poorly with Murktide and Delve threats in general because you
right,
just do not have the mana to just continue to eat their and not progress your board.
right. I mean, obviously the counter argument is like, okay, it gains you life, it's great, but I kind of feel like the games nowadays are so snowbally that using mana to try to go after the graveyard doesn't really work out well for you.
Agreed. That's the reason why I stopped playing. I just realized it just doesn't like endurance just does what it does for way more efficient, right? Granted, not at instant speed.
Right. Okay. So let's see what else happened. The second match.
Actually, one quick thing. Um, just so everybody, full disclosure to everybody at least, from my perspective, I definitely misplayed that game to the first match against you. I don't know if you had any like small mistakes you want to just mention to because I have you on stream on my stream at the moment too, right? If you want to point anything out from your side.
I mean, I definitely made some small mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
some that I caught immediately, and some that I think were just judgment calls.
Uh huh.
Um,
So the big one I had game two against in the first match against you was I elected to bog and I just didn't think it through. I should have endurance because if you force that, you get the damage from the DRC. I don't know if you remember the boards here or not. From the DRC and the Murktide through, but then I had a follow up grist that I can take down at least the Murktide, the Falling Tree. But because I made the wrong play, you could just force the one spell instead of having to do both. If that makes sense.
oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Um, a lot of times I'm just fine with my DRCs being eaten by endurances, if you notice that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot more willing to let them go than I think some of the other Delver players are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think generally a random DRC attacking you for damage actually matters that much.
I think it depends on the hand and the play style. I think I have definitely, from my perspective, lost to my fair share, like either double DRC, double Delver, or 1+1 and they're on the play, right? Where I just get like essentially aped out for all intents and purposes. So those are the hands I tend to lose to, you know, in my experience against a Delver.
Right. So yeah, I think I'm trying to remember the second match, game three, just showed how powerful the symbiote visionary engine is. Because I think I cast both of my sweepers that game, and
Mm-hmm.
you still had plenty of stuff, like not even
Yes.
close.
Yeah, I think the thing is like, and I think you probably agree. I think with most decks, the way you attack elves is you hit their mana, because if they have the mana, they can just outgrind you in most circumstances. Obviously, top deck mode is a different circumstance, but in general, what do you think about that? Because of the how that game three played out.
I think Elves is underrated in how well it can grind. Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have much to say about that. Um. I feel like the first match I played against as Elves versus you,
Mm-hmm.
I think I didn't run very well in the games that were played.
Yeah,
Is how I would put it.
it looked like you were stuck on mana game one, was it? I don't remember.
Yeah, when I mean, I can just recheck real quick,
Sure.
but I think basically my opening hand was quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Like in game one, it was Birchwood Rangers, Zenith, Shepherd, Arbor, Bayou, Heath, Glimpse of Nature,
Mm-hmm.
which you can never mulligan versus anyone. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you led with Steam Vents, and the only way you lead with Steam Vents is if it's your only land besides Wasteland, or your only other land is like Mystic Sanctuary or something like that.
So I led with it personally because I think at the time my other land was a fetch, so I wanted to cantrip into fetch the following turn. It was my logic.
Mm, I think virtually everyone, the life loss is likely to cost you more, but I don't know. Like
I think in this
it
matchup,
depends.
usually not, but that was at least my logic. I don't know if it was correct or not. If
Right,
you had seen my hand.
right.
One thing I did want to ask you about though was I noticed when I sideboarded against you with your configuration, what do you prioritize taking out? Because I think that the cards I brought in were the submerge, obviously, and the two sweepers. I thought about the snapcaster, but I opted not to. In hindsight, I think I would have changed that, and I boarded out obviously the pyroblast, I think the borrower and the in 1 days. And in hindsight, maybe I bring out 2 days.
I just side out 2 days plus the extra cards you listed.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that sounds
So yeah.
exactly. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I'm rewatching this game one.
Uh huh.
You wasted my cradle, and I lost because of it, because my hand was just like natural order glimpse, visionary symbiote by the end that I didn't get to deploy.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to bring up. The a point of contention at the moment with how to sideboard and play the deck is regards to the natural order package. I noticed you kept it in. Was that
I didn't keep all of it in. The
okay?
way I explained it to my chat is I left in one hoof, one uh natural order.
Okay, that's fair. And then I'm assuming you probably boarded out some number of heritage instead, then, right?
No.
Okay,
I let's see. Let me. I can tell you what I did.
sure, sure.
Let
And
me just click in it
right.
real quick. Uh, I cited out two natural order, one archon,
Mm-hmm.
the collector oof.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, that's
That should be
four.
4, yeah.
So and I want one, two, three, four, five, six. I'm gonna point this out. I don't think snuff out's great because I think paying life to kill their stuff is not where you want to be.
Okay, so that's something Max has brought up with me as well. My logic for playing it at the moment is because what I've found is, especially for other elf players, is it's very difficult to win when you're on the draw. And I think the other thing is, with regards to Murktide region, it often doesn't really change the clock because you're taking 7 or 8 each time. So that is my logic for it. And so far, at least, it's played out okay. Granted, the sample size is very low, and I think I only mentioned this either to you like earlier this week or at the latest earlier last week. But that is
Okay,
at least the logic,
yeah,
huh?
right. I figured out what other two cards I cut. I cut two OATs, and I know you hate doing that, but I actually have reasonable logic for it.
Okay, go ahead. I mean this could be
Okay,
interesting for my audience too.
so I'll I'll explain my logic for that.
Uh
Is
huh.
I think uh, it's there's multiple ways to view it. Yes, okay. I think the best way of putting it is my opening hand. If there's no odd in it, great. That's fantastic. That's like probably whatever percentage of a land slash elf you need it to be. Uh, if you draw it later, that's not great. But I kind of think what happens a lot in the post board dynamic is that you're not necessarily looking for very specific cards very often. You're just looking for a quantity of cards because the way that this list is designed to sideboard is you just want to play a card economy game most of the time. And I kind of think like Once Upon a Time isn't even that necessary in those sorts of games. Your land count's high enough, so the only reason to have 4 OATs in your deck, in my opinion, is if you really think the only way you can lose is to getting mana screwed in the matchup, and I don't think that's even remotely close to true.
Okay, so I think okay, so you hit that part. That part is definitely accurate in the sense that the reason why I keep all four once upon a time, and actually went up to four from three before, and actually even went up, a land count. Because I think when I incorporated the once upon a time package, I was on 20 lands. Obviously, three of them are two arbors and one bog. But from my perspective, yeah, I found the only way, or not the only way, the easiest way to lose is just to not hit land drops and then hopefully get to the late game. But like you said, that could be a point of contention because that's not necessarily true. That if you get to the late game, you're essentially very likely to win. I think that's dependent on a few things. One of them is like obviously, pilot, but obviously what your opponent's sideboard could have as well.
Yeah, so like I I kind of feel like hmm, I don't think having sometimes it's just a mystery box card. Like I guess this is a question I was meaning to ask you. Do
Hmm.
you keep zero lander with OAT? Like if the hand's otherwise strong?
So if I would keep under normal circumstances, if that once upon a time is let's just say a fetch or a bayou, right? Then yes, I would keep. So for instance, if the rest of the hand is just like visionaries, warwoods, natural order, and just like no other land, I would not keep that even if that
Sure.
was a land, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't keep it with the once upon a time. But assuming the once upon a time hits, and based on the fact that you have roughly 80%, I think it's like 75 at the moment, or sorry, around 80% chance of hitting the initial mana source, I would otherwise keep, yes.
I'm gonna just check the math on that real quick.
Sure.
One,
I
two,
think
three,
at the
four, five,
moment,
six, seven, eight. 8, 9, 10.
you have
Yeah,
14
well, you have
IMS.
12. No, you have 12. Oh no, you have 14 because of the Besages.
Hmm.
That number used to be a lot lower, I feel like.
Which number?
The how many untapped green sources you had.
It was 13. Like I said, I added one
Okay,
Baseju because uh, like I've swapped. I want to play as many Besejus as possible because I think the card is just
sure.
really good. So I cut
Hmm.
a creature for the essentially the 14 IMS. It was 13 before.
Okay, I see. Um, it's actually 79.9% to hit off an OAT.
Okay, so
So
just under hitting
I
it.
think basically on the draw, I guess that makes a lot of sense because A, you have your draw step,
Hmm.
which contributes a lot, and B, then you have this like extra uh 80%. And I guess technically a good way of viewing it is suppose you just counted your draw step plus OAT, you're up to like 86% to hit,
Right.
and untapped. I think
Right.
on the play it's like kind of interesting if you're supposed to keep or not.
Hmm.
And I don't know how often does it happen to you that people just counter your OATs? I would guess almost never, right?
Almost never. I think the only time I've ever really seen it be really popular was right before Dreadhorde got banned. So I think this was right after the 2020 Mox event that I played. So I had taken a break from
Right,
Legacy, and I came back and I'm
right.
like, what is going on? People are countering my Once Upon a Times, and then it makes sense though, right? Because they want to just aggressively push the Dreadhorde Arcanist to the finish line,
I
so to
see.
speak. So I think that would probably be the highest time where I got Once Upon a Time countered, but that was also a very specific metagame because it was, like I said, right before Dread War got banned.
Okay, I see. So yeah, let me try to remember what else happened in those games. Oh, the last match we played was kind of a joke. I don't know, like I just basically had pretty good elf draws, and
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't really handle everything. I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
I put this well, sorry. I put this best before for Blue or Delver. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the games Blue or Delver the Blue or Delver really needs a mix of reactive cards, removal, and threats to
Mm-hmm.
win most games. In the Elves matchup, it can be skewed a little bit less on threats and more on card advantage slash Merc Tides. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't really care about a random DRC or Delver. Those can just like go go fuck off because they don't kill fast enough. I mean, obviously, if you have like
You have
three of
two
them
ways to
by
get them
turn
right.
two,
Huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
if you have multiples of them by like turn two, then sure, that's like a reliable game plan. Otherwise, I think what happens is you get your opponent down to like you know
8 or something, right?
12, yeah, 12 or 9, and then you actually have to like find the missing points some other way. Um, especially with endurance involved, like I
That's what I kind of felt too from I think the match number 3. So the first one I was on from playing from the blue red side. In game
yeah
2, I was at a point where I was like, okay, the floodgates are starting to open. I have to just essentially go all in on trying to get the last few points of damage in, and that's why I slammed
yeah.
the Murktide right off. I think I pondered or
Mhm.
iteration, and I was just like, well, one chain lightning is not going to get there, so I just have to essentially hope I can go wide with the flyers, and then like you can't deal with them all because essentially shields were down after the initial mana disruption, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So for those of you who are wondering, I think I don't really care about the exact win percentage of decks or whatever. I think it's more important to realize how the games are won or lost from both sides rather than what the win percentages are. So that's really what we're discussing right now. And I think basically we're discussing the fact that it doesn't really matter. Your like one drop threats don't really matter in the matchup. Obviously, like if you can stick one in and it kills your opponent, great. That's a win. Like you take those, but I'm just saying, especially in a post board game when there's like 4 endurance, that's not a very likely plan. And in fact, you should probably be wary of endurance and not just like drive your creatures straight into endurance because I think throwing cards away is a good way to lose as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think endurance. I mean, I want to give since you're on my you're also someone who's on my stream at the moment. You the shout out. Jarvis was actually the first person who messaged me upon the endurance spoilers saying, I think this is gonna be archetype defining for elves. And sure enough, it took a while, but the incorporation of endurance means that you have just so much flexibility in the sideboard now to address that you bring it in against Euro decks and graveyard decks or Doomsday obviously, but then the ability just to go to board out as much or if you want any of the natural order package as you want is a big flexibility option if that makes sense.
Someone in my chat just asked, "Do you cast upkeep a lot in Legacy because of days?" I would say generally yes, especially if you're keeping a zero lander.
So okay, I think that depends on the person. I generally do not because I do not want to tip my hand that I kept a zero lander. So I always try to play the same way if that makes sense.
Yeah, but that, I mean, I don't think that actually makes sense because, like, I think if you give them the information that you don't have any lands by casting it during their upkeep,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't. Alternatively, you could always just cast it during their upkeep and balance your range that way. Like, I don't think it really. The only time it's better to do it on your turn, really,
Mm-hmm.
is because you get a little bit more information because of your draw step. So if you know your opponent doesn't even play like a blue deck, then it's probably just correct to wait 100% of the time, anyways. So I think like just saying doing it the same time every time
Mm-hmm.
doesn't actually make sense because you should actually do it differently based on what you expect your opponent to do.
I think that's fair. I also depends if people start. Thank you for the follow, Sven Prop. I think also depends if people start to counter my Once Upon a Time. Generally speaking, it doesn't happen. So if people start doing that, then I may do it. But for the most part, I haven't really seen people aggressively counter Once Upon a Time for what it's worth. They will
Okay,
generally counter my
fair
one
enough.
drop if it's not Shepherd, obviously, if anything.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like I don't. Besides missing lethal that one turn, but I think
Hmm.
you were just unfathomably dead that match anyways. Like, I mean,
Agreed.
I think basically I threw 100% away to go to like 95% or whatever, which is bad, obviously, but it's not. I mean, I think I was probably going to win a staggering
So
large
I mentioned
proportion
this.
of the time.
Yeah, I mentioned this to my chat actually when you uh, miss lethal. There was also a point where you bounced your visionary and then played a cradle and tapped it. What you should have done was actually play the
I was
cradle.
supposed to float. I was supposed to float. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
No,
figured you
I
probably
knew.
realized that afterwards, but I actually mentioned to my chat that even though Jarvis just missed lethal, we're 100% still dead. Like because the Wirewood is gonna continue to essentially eat us alive with a visionary, right? Like that. Like I'm not gonna even be
Yeah.
able to stabilize, even if I found End of Festivities, for instance. I made the mistake of pitching the Ponder to find the out, but again, like you said, I was probably dead regardless because I didn't have the start. Essentially, missing the volcanic island early just set me too far back.
Yeah, I've thought about this before if you should just side out Snow Island, but then I remember that people just play trophies, so like you can't really side it out because just giving up that free card is a little bit too much.
Right, right. That's
Uh,
something I was gonna ask you about. If you thought it was worth it, and especially if you know your opponent does not have trophy, for instance.
well, there's also the issue that sometimes happens, less so versus this matchup, but
Hmm.
sometimes you just serve Veil way too many fetchable sources,
Sure,
so
sure.
you kind of need enough in your deck. That's the reason that I don't think you can really go below like six fetchables,
I,
period.
I think your list has
Um,
7, right?
uh,
If I
okay,
remember
yeah, it
correctly.
has seven. It has the Mystic Sanctuaries the seventh. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's right. Yeah, I guess you can't really go below six for sure, but
Hmm.
seven's safer, and the Snow Island does enough that I think you're supposed to have it in this matchup.
That and the sanctuary is also just dead right early. Well, when I say dead,
Well,
awkward is probably the right word.
the Sanctuary is dead early, but I think it's just if you've ever watched these Blue Red Delver mirrors play out now,
Hmm.
there's the Sanctuary is so important for the games that basically there are two types of Delver games now. I think it's someone gets killed on turn four, and the other ones go to like turn 20.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
if you don't have Sanctuary in your deck for the games that go to turn 20, you actually just auto lose. Like
No,
it's not even close.
no. You brought up a good point. Like the game one in match 3 against you. It was the sanctuary that really won the game because I just like found iteration and then just essentially went deeper there that way, right? And it found more
Yeah,
destruction.
I remembered. You blind flipped Force to your Delver,
No, no.
but you should have
It
just
was known. The force was known because.
oh, you knew that? Okay, but if you're gonna sanctuary iteration anyways, you might
Mhm.
as well just sanctuary iteration, just reveal that anyways.
No, I agree. Somebody in my chat pointed out, oh, it doesn't matter because you can just do it right now in case they have endurance or something, right? But the force was known from a cantrip earlier. I think it was a ponder.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah, there's also like some weird sanctuary tricks involving Murktide with like exact combat damage or whatever, because you can get a +1/+1 counter on it essentially with sanctuary.
Oh, right, right,
Also,
right.
Snapcaster Mage on your spell also pumps Murktide. There's like a lot of really goofy things like that actually I've seen happen. I've come up with.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've seen it myself where like I forget about it and then they like sanctuary for the last point of damage for Murktide to get across the finish line. So definitely very relevant.
yeah. So obviously 4 matches isn't a lot, but I feel like I haven't played a lot with this version. But
Hmm.
I hate to tell you, I still found myself never having the time to activate Elvish Reclaimer. Maybe it's just the way I play the deck that doesn't allow me that flexibility. Maybe I should be looking for that more. But
Go ahead.
I
I'll let you
mean,
finish first.
Yeah, I just found it hard to spare 2 mana, like generally speaking, is my actual issue. So if you feel like you can't spare 2 mana, then obviously Elvish Reclaimer is going to look not very good,
Yeah, so
generally speaking.
I think on that topic, I do want to say I think a lot of times it's harder for at least veteran elf players to play this version, especially against something like Delver where you don't feel like you have the time. So Brian Koval, Boston wrote when he played this deck, he mentioned at the his conclusion, one heuristic he's not sure about was, am I supposed to just always fetch Cradle on two? And then I answered, unless you're going off with Heritage Druid that turn, either with Glimpse or Visionary, the answer is almost always yes, actually, because
I
what
see.
so that's hard I think for a lot of time elf players to do because myself included when I first essentially built this deck, right? Because your natural instinct is to commit to the board, and you have to kind of unlearn that if that makes sense.
Well, so one thing is I never actually had the Reclaimer on one, right?
I don't
So
think you
like
did, right? So that is
So
that
like
too.
I actually think I would have adhered to that, but that's because I think the incremental value of 2 mana on turn two versus the incremental value of 2 mana on turn four or whatever, they're like varying. It's a lot better to sacrifice 2 mana on turn two for a enormous mana boost in the form of Gaia's Cradle on turn two than it is to do it later and then like also be like more exposed to Wasteland or whatever, you know?
I would agree with that. Yes, like on especially when you go turn one on the play off a fetch, and your opponent just does not have force or
Yeah.
removal, right? They just feel so far behind because you're gonna untap with Guy's Cradle on
Yeah.
turn three, and the game is for all intents and purposes probably over.
Yeah, it's just the way most Delver decks are designed right now, they have 6 1 mana removal or 5 1 mana removal spells and dazes and forces that I guess if you're on the play dazes out, but
Right.
I your reclaimer doesn't really get to that point that often is what I would actually say, but I mean it does happen a non-zero amount of the time, you know.
What it does do from a strategic standpoint is, from what I found, is it may deter your opponent from playing a threat on turn one though, because you don't really want to allow the reclaimer to untap. But
Oh, I see. Yeah, because then they have to like burn a removal spell instead of playing their Delver or DRC or whatever.
right. From a
I see.
strategic standpoint, it tends to be relevant, even if they do kill the reclaimer on one or force it.
I see. Okay, well that's interesting to know. Yeah, I guess it's in some sense it A like ports their mana that turn and B is like a spell skite
Yes,
because
yes, that's probably good a way to describing that. One thing that you mentioned that I appreciate is you mentioned from a macro standpoint, knowing how what an elf win looks like and what a delver win looks like, and I think that's what a lot of players don't focus on
right.
enough, even outside of this matchup.
Yeah, of course. Like I kind of feel like I've and basically with any deck when I start playing it, I just write down how I think the deck is going to win and
Mm-hmm.
try to just achieve those board states every time
Mm-hmm.
until I know better like then like on some certain subtle like gameplay things I can figure out better after I practice more. But like we should just summarize. Like I think blue red wins either through like recurring iteration a million times and like actually killing everything, or Murktide hitting the elf player twice and like double bolt is like those are the most common ways to win.
Or,
Of course, you
or the three threats on turn two or something where they all flip, right?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
that too,
yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah, you could have like Delver into Delver and flip all of them, and then like your opponent's just auto dead.
Right.
But or like DRC Delver DRC, like any combination of those, if they're all like online by turn two, then like your opponent's probably dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from the elf side, I kind of feel like it's pretty easy to imagine this. If the game goes really long in game one, elves is inherently favored because what's going to happen is eventually Shepherd's going to stick and either Crater Hoof or Shepherd activation or Natural Order or Zenith for Hoof will kill the opponent. So in game one, I think the elf standpoint is to just not get killed if possible. I mean, and that's what your sideboard plan encourages, right? Like not getting killed,
Yes.
because the idea is the game. The longer the game goes on, the better it is.
Hmm.
For the elf deck. So I think that mostly remains true in post board game, and you just side in a bunch of endurances because A, they're good blockers, and B, they sort of shut off the turbo Murktide aspect.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all what you just said right now. Like, especially game one when you know there's no sweepers, you essentially just play to the board, and then
Yeah.
one of two things can happen. Either the Delver has to waste time, burning remove on your one ones that you don't even care about, or
Mhm.
two, they neglect it, and then you just like combo kill them, right?
Yeah. It, I I mean, obviously, Glimpse is worse in this deck, but I think in this deck, Glimpse is just like either concentrate or divination most of the time, right?
I think it depends. In this matchup, it's what I found is it's the elf version of expressive iteration. So oftentimes you get to the mid game and you're drawing a three for all intents and purposes. In other matchups, especially against control, you can still draw your whole deck. More rare in this
I
against
see.
yeah
I see.
because against control you actually have the time to turn one reclaimer, turn two cradle, right, and then turn three. Now the shields are like way down essentially for the control player. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I see. Um. Anyways, just to check, how were you sideboarding with elves versus blue red?
With this list that we both, so I think what we did was pretty nice because we both played the exact same 75.
Yeah.
What I did was I cut the entire natural order package, and the logic is
Sure.
if you have natural order in your opening hand, it's almost as bad as a mulligan. And if you have like a hoof, it is essentially a mulligan. And
Right.
I cut the entire natural order package plus collector oof, and then so it's also this is also in Jurg's Google Docs, and I boarded in the full set of endurances, so that's three, the two snuff
Okay.
outs, and then the assassin's trope because essentially I want to go low to the ground, and then my logic is I think if I can keep up with the Delver player early, I should be favored in the late game. That's less true now because of iteration when both sides are top decking, but still I think for the most part accurate.
I think one thing that's also interesting is I think Mystic Sanctuary. Before I didn't have it in for selves, and then now I'm just like it's obviously correct to have it in my deck for the matchup.
I agree.
Uh, and like same for Snapcaster Mage. So
Hmm.
the endurance instantly hitting the graveyard, both for Murktide and for that sort of stuff, actually matters a lot as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, one thing that came up also is I mentioned with endurances, I will rarely evoke it because I just don't. Depending on the
sure.
number of cards on the opponent's hand, I think you are unlikely to win if you will be behind on cards if you have to revoke it. Now, if you're already on cards, that's a different story. But that is my personal preference. I don't know how much if you mentioned that at all or not.
I I don't think I'm trying to evoke it versus them because I think the creature matters a lot as
Agreed.
well. I think it's not even about the card disadvantage for me. I think just a
Mm.
3/4 reach creature is worth so much. Like
Right, right. Yeah, there was that
because in
one
the game,
game where I just like flooded three fours on the board, and it was just really problematic for you.
yeah, I don't think I could ever win that game. Pretty much, I basically told my chat the way I could win that game was if literally on the turn you did all of that. If I like iteration into
All burn or something. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It had to be a really good iteration, and I had to draw iteration, so that didn't happen. So yeah, so I think that's about what I have for this matchup, and I think a lot of interesting things came up. You know, uh, I feel like did we see the full spectrum of tricks from both sides? Like
What do you mean by
weird,
tricks?
I don't know, like weird play scenarios that you don't often see. Trying to
Um,
remember.
I think we saw how games typically play out, and I think it's kind of nice in this case too because we both won one from each side. So I think there's good data there because I think for sure I would be more obviously comfortable playing from the elf side, and I think I mean, I don't want to speak for sure, but I would guess you're more comfortable playing from the Delver side. But what I did notice though, playing from the other side, the floor probably for the blue red side is just so much higher because there's no way I'm
Oh yeah.
as good a player as you, and I just like won one match where I just just did Delver things, so to speak, to put it bluntly.
Well, it's just because like the power level of those cards is like so high that like the deck inherently is propped up by that.
Hmm.
So that's what you're experiencing. And like for that reason, I think that deck is actually really good. Like just to recommend to anyone because like I mean
Agreed.
the cards are broken and like I personally don't see a reason to play anything else until something else happens. Not that something should happen. It's just I personally will probably not do anything else for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think another thing I want to mention is also when I made the game, the mistake match one round game number two, like that. I think it was one I mentioned earlier where I should have played endurance. It would probably draw out the force in that situation, and I could slam Gris. What is potentially obvious to me and you might not be obvious to the audience is from the elf perspective. I feel you almost have to play not it maybe not 100%, but you have to get at least 90 to 95. Like, and with Delver, I think you have to only get maybe to 70, especially in this matchup. What are your thoughts on that?
Um,
Especially against good players.
yeah, I think I sort of see what you're saying, but I think you could make that argument for any deck versus a good player. So I'm not sure if I really can get behind the sentiment. I
Sure.
mean, I understand what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is I think what you're actually saying is it's more straightforward to play the blue red deck than it is the elf deck, is what you're actually trying to say.
I would agree with that. But yeah, that's fair. I would agree with that. At least that statement standalone. But because I've found out like people who ask me about who are elf players and they ask me, it's like, man, I don't know how you, because my win rate against blue red personally is at the moment like 60%. And like I
Mhm.
said, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I think I mentioned just on my stream earlier. The win rate for elves in challenges right now is like 30% against blue red, and I think
Yeah.
I think what's happening is um, either the blue red player is just a better player. I mean, I don't know if that's the case or not, or just they're making less mistakes because the deck is easier to play, or a combination of both. But I feel like the elf player is definitely really punished for mistakes, and even Jurg, he himself said his win rate right now in big events is only 27%, and um, I think yeah. So I'll let you just address that for a second.
Um, yeah, it's I don't know. I think a part of it is that it's also probably somewhat draw dependent, and the blue red deck basically doesn't really have bad draws because all of the cards like stabilize the draw, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas
for
like
sure.
it the only way the elves deck can smooth out its draw is by drawing more cards or having an OAT in the opener.
Right.
So that's just like less of those copies of cards make it harder to do that. So I think in reality is maybe part of the not so good win rate is you're seeing the inherent variance in a non-blue deck is how I would put it best.
I can see that, especially if the elf player doesn't know when to mulligan certain hands. So that's probably a good point. I think what I can imagine happening then is like you keep a more high variant hand, and then instead of mulliganing when you're supposed to, which I can see a less experienced elf player not making that correct judgment call.
Right.
All right.
So yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was just about to say, for those of you who are watching the stream on my side slash watching on Newton's side, are there any other changes you're thinking about testing in the future, based on metagame adjustments? Or I'm kind of curious personally.
I know this is not from Chad, but I guess one question I would defer to you on this is: do you like Submerge or End of Festivities better from your side?
or specifically the elf matchup.
Uh, yes, or in general, both actually.
I mean, they're different cards, so I don't know how to really answer that. Like,
I guess
I
what
mean,
about in the elf matchup then?
in the elf matchup, I think end is slightly better
Hmm.
if you only wanted to dedicate a certain amount. The reason I have both is because I want submerge as coverage versus like Knight of the Reliquary and shit like that.
And
You
dark
know,
depths,
like
right?
well, I mean, I'm gonna point this out to everyone. If you
Hmm.
try to submerge certain depths players, it doesn't work that well because they can actually leave themselves with no forests. So
Hmm.
it like you cited it, of course, but it's not always going to be that reliable. I
Right,
just
right.
think having one submerge is good, and obviously it is good in the elves matchup. I'm just saying I think the value over replacement for submerge versus end the festivities, the value over replacement for end the festivities is much higher.
Interesting. Okay, I guess on that topic, what about end versus rough? Is there a reason
Okay,
why you want to kill
there
X2s?
actually is a reason. If I expected the field to be all death and taxes, I would just play two then festivities
Hmm.
and no rough tumble.
Uh-huh.
But because I expect certain people to play Reclaimer elves, the fact that rough can kill Reclaimer plus another elf on turn two is actually worth a lot to me.
Oh, so it's really just a specific card for elves then. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and there's no more awkwardness with your own Ragavan, so like it's kind of just all upside to me to just play Rough Tumble instead of the second end. And I also think there's just like you can get into situations where if you can like rough, Sanctuary back rough, brainstorm the rough in your hand, cast it again to even kill the 3/4 reclaimers.
That makes sense. Actually, that's good to know. I did not realize what's called that was specifically to hedge in the direction of elves, but good to know. I just assumed that there was like other X2s that you cared about from other archetypes,
There's
but
there's not that many. Like, I mean, killing Solitude is nice, I guess,
mhm.
but like, it, for what it's worth, you're getting Solituded and then they're staying in play. You're probably losing that game by a lot already.
I
Is
would
how I
agree.
would put it.
I would
Um,
agree.
the the I mean this is a bit of digression, but the way that the blue red versus D&T matchup
Mhm.
functions nowadays is a lot different. I usually just play Protect the Queen on Murktide because it's
Uh-huh.
the easiest way to beat them. I guess that's actually kind of similar to Elves, but the difference is D&T can't combo kill you. What
Mhm.
they can do is just try to grind you with like a million annoying two for ones instead. So that's why the easiest way to beat them is to just like make an 8/8 fire on turn three and just force every plow or solitude.
That
And that
actually
like
good.
sorry, it costs a lot of cards, but really like I don't really care how many cards I have if they're dead and I have zero cards.
I mean that's very fair, and that actually makes a lot of sense too because given what you said about how you can do that to a certain extent against elves, but they can combo kill you. I think that's actually brings up a good point that I think especially since I watched I think one of the images that Yerg and other elf players sent to me recently, one thing that they I think have a hard time doing is um, against control, you're always the aggressor, so to speak. You're always being proactive. Against combo, you're always kind of reactive, like hold reclaimer up, play Thoughtseize, etc. I think with the tempo matchups against Delver specifically, I think what a lot of elf players are having trouble with is knowing when you need to just forget about answering the Delver threat and just go wide. And because once a Murktide sticks, you can't worry about like you know their graveyard or whatever anymore. You have to kind of commit
No,
to
no,
yeah. So, and I see
no.
people
Well,
thinking about bog and whatnot, and I just think you're just playing too defensively.
no, once like a 6/6 Murktide in play, all bets are off. You should just try to kill them or like get enough blockers to block. But I
Right,
don't
right,
really like the like mass block perspective because that's too easy to have it go wrong.
right.
Personally,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. I think the thing is like when that happens, what I usually tell people is you have to get reclaimer. You have to rotate essentially for cradle and hope to go wide and kill them with like shepherd activation or something like that, or find the grist, right?
right, yeah. Um, all right. I think that was a pretty good coverage. I don't really have anything else or any other thoughts on the matchup. Um, yeah. So do you want to tell my chat where they can find you? Yeah, I know you have a Discord. Uh, I know you have a Twitch. So now's the time for you to plug it.
Sure. I'll go. Should I? Do you want me to just post it on your chat?
No, just say it first, then post it.
Sure. What's it called? I have a Patreon that you can find from my Twitter. My Twitter is just Hello Newton. What else? So I have a Patreon that's like $5 subscription per month, and then my Twitter. I have a Discord that is specific for this archetype. But even if you play the traditional build, for instance, I've had a couple of like Fluffy 21 or in the past Testacular has posted a lot in my Discord, and then it's just good conversation regardless of which archetype you want to play. Also, I post my YouTube, and I'm sure Jarvis will do the same with this. So you can find me with on Hello Noon with YouTube as well.
All right. Cool. So if you want to support Newton, that's how you can. Um,
Also, quick plug for Jarvis. For those who don't know, I consider Jarvis, who's still watching my stream, I consider Jarvis probably the best player I know personally in regards to overall Magic, and his specialties. While he can play different archetypes, like regardless of format and whatnot. But if you're interested in Land's content, I know he has a Patreon, and it comes with free coaching. Not free, but the Patreon subscription comes with coaching session as well for the Lands archetype. If you want to quickly plug that here on my stream, or just mention a little bit about that, go ahead, Jarvis.
yeah, sure. So to summarize that one real quick, uh, currently the Patreon, uh, it's $15 per month to get access to a 30-page lands guide that I wrote. I haven't updated it in a little bit. I probably am going to do a relatively big update soon. But if you pay a little bit more, you can get a 2-hour session with me about lands or about some other legacy deck if you really want to do that. I feel pretty confident that I can learn or give good advice on most of the decks in Legacy. Uh, because I do try a lot of decks. I think generally what I said in the past is I think if you don't try every deck at least once, you're probably missing out on some diamonds in the rough relatively often. Is how I would put it the best.
Not to mention the
Uh,
best way to know how to beat a certain matchup is to play from the other side too, as Jarvis hinted at earlier.
Yeah, but also just like if you play a lot of decks, it's actually pretty easy. It's easier to pick up new decks faster. Is another way of putting it.
Yep, I totally agree. One thing I want to also mention is, for those who don't know, Jarvis, I actually went to Jarvis for tutoring or coaching session when I was essentially picking limited code for the Mox event. And when I say code, I mean have never drafted in my life outside of Cube. So Jarvis was able to turn me to a 2-1 finish in the Mox event in only, I think, I forget how many sessions we had, but it was less than. I had a month to prep, and I think we only had like 2 or 3 sessions.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously did a lot of work. Like you went on that God account and burnt all of the play points multiple times or something like that. I mean, obviously reps matter, but there's also a significant difference between league play than pod play because it. I mean, I'm not going to rant about this too much, but the fact is, league drafts and pod drafts are very different. Um, you can see this at the PT level now that they're coming back.
Mm.
Praise Jesus or whatever you want to say about that because I love paper magic and I'm going to be trying pretty hard to qualify for that one. But yeah, I do love booster draft and I'm trying to get people to draft IRL now and then, real sets. Um, yeah, I think just the replayability of limited is one of the big factors for me
Mm-hmm.
because obviously like constructed formats can get stale, but every time you sit down at a new booster draft with different people, you don't really know how it's going to go,
Mm-hmm.
because people always have different opinions. You could just be in a weird seat to draft some deck that no one's ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Although, like, I think for us, I advise you not to draft any really weird decks because that requires a lot of like out of the box. Like, you have to be a Sam Black sometimes to draft those weird decks, not a Reed Duke is how I would put it.
That makes sense. Yep, I totally want to shout out Jarvis for doing this with me. Uh, when I had this idea to do, and obviously I will be willing to do it with other people as well, but given that blue red is the most popular matchup, I wanted to do this spotlight, so to speak, from both sides. And I personally went to Jarvis because one, he's the best player I know, and two, because he's played at least both sides. Elves lesser recently, but to an extent before. And I think the way I'll put it is I'm more scared, and of course, if you're the way to get better is to play people just as good or slightly better than you, and I would be more scared to run into Jarvis than like another really high profile blue red player because I think Jarvis knowing how Elves ticks at least to some extent is a big deal.
Yeah. And obviously, like, we can't really undersell your capabilities with elves. I mean, sometimes I think to myself that you're winning less than you should in Legacy because you choose to play this deck rather than blue red, but that's a different story. I've definitely had this conversation with you because I
Yes,
think
for
you are
sure.
a talented player, but I sometimes think that you just like this deck too much. So, not to throw shade on you. I think it's just
No, no, no.
I think
It's actually a
I think
compliment. Thank you.
yeah, I think it's just the fact of the matter is I felt like you played those games fine, and if you just played this deck more often, you would just realize how stupid this deck is, and you'd win like maybe you would even win more, even in the mirrors, because the mirrors like remember how I was saying that games are either ended on turn 4 or turn 20?
Yeah,
I happen to think the turn 20 case is a lot more frequent than the turn 4 case.
makes
So
sense.
what that actually means is the better player usually wins those 20 turn games.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And
So
on that note, actually, like I said, I didn't want to be completely cold coming in today because I'm not used to like the ponder heuristics in terms of putting cards back.
yeah,
Because I don't want to misclick by accident in our matches and just have like a
sure.
game thrown away. But when I ran it through the league, it was pretty dumb how many games I just won on the power of like, oh, this deck just has all the answers, and your deck, has weaknesses, and I don't really have weaknesses. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like a fair deck that has card advantage, so it's
Mm.
really hard to attack, and it can also provide a fast clock. So it's very malleable, is how I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I would actually describe it as a Jund deck that doesn't have the Jund weaknesses.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're like a Jund deck, but you get to play Force of Will, and you get to have more
Yeah,
consistency with your cantrips.
yeah. Anyways, my throat is really starting to kill me more because I've had a pretty bad cough the last few days, so I think I'm about ready to call it myself. Are you going to be playing a little bit more after this, or are you done?
I'm gonna be what's called eating dinner right now, but I
Yeah,
just wanted to
sure.
thank you again for doing this with
Yep.
me. I think there's no
Yep.
other questions, so you want to just call it?
Yep. Um, Thanks everyone, and thanks Newton for asking me to do this. And I hope everyone got good information out of it.
All right.
So we'll see
Oh,
y'all next time.
all right. See you guys. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna raid someone real quick, so stick around for that.
Same here.
We'll raid the Legacy Pit.
That's exactly who I was gonna raid right now.
Yep.